Today I'm going to teach you how to use Kitchener stitch to graft together ribbing or any other stitch pattern that's a combination of knit and purl stitches, both flat and in the round. This tutorial is associated with Lokahjarta, which is this ribbed sport weight hat you see here, and the modified Kitchener stitch graft that I'm about to teach you is what allows the ribbing to roll smoothly over the top of the crown of the hat and give it this really seamless finish. You can see that. So if you're interested in this pattern, I will leave the full details for where to find it in the description below. Let's start with the flat example. So I have my flat example here. I have the right sides facing out. So right side, the wrong sides of the fabric are facing together. I have my yarn tail about 3 times the maximum width of this fabric, so stretched out, and then 3 times that wide, tapestry needle on the end. You want the yarn tail connected to the back needle. When you learn Kitchener stitch for stockinette, the phrase you're taught to remember is knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on, which is fine because if you repeat these instructions correctly, it'll create a row of knit stitches between the 2 rows of live stitches that you're grafting together. So for stockinette stitch, it works great, but it's a little bit hard to remember. And if you have any purl stitches, it doesn't work as well. It's not as seamless. So an easier way to remember it that works equally well for all stitch patterns, including stockinette actually, is same off, opposite on. And then anything you do on the front needle, you're immediately going to mirror on the back needle. So to set up, you just start with 1 opposite on the front needle and 1 opposite on the back needle. So you're going to go purl on, pull it through. Make sure your yarn tail is under the needles, by the way. You don't want to accidental yarn over at any point. So under the needles, purl on, and then opposite thing on the back needle, you're going to knit on. And that's your setup. And then you're going to go same off, opposite on. So these are 2 knit stitches right here. So you're going to knit off. So that's the same way off. And then purl on. Opposite way on. Does that make sense? And then for the back, exactly the other way around. You're going to knit off and purl on. Again, make sure your yarn tail is underneath the needle tips because you don't want any yarn overs. And just keep going. So this is a knit purl. So you're going to same off, knit off, opposite on. You're going to knit on for this purl stitch. So that was a knit, knit, which means the back needle is going to be the opposite, purl, purl. So let's purl this one off and purl that one on. Now we have a purl, purl, so same off, opposite on, purl off, knit on, mirror it on the back needle, knit off, purl on. By the way, it's mirrored on the back needle because the wrong side is facing, so these stitches are just exactly the opposite of whatever you have on the front needle. That's why that happens. So purl, knit, you're going to purl off, purl on, mirror it on the back needle, knit off, and knit on. And you just continue like that all the way across the row. So when you're down to your last 2 stitches on each needle, you're going to continue as you have been. These are 2 knits, so I'm going to knit off, purl on. Oops. and then purl knit on the back. And then for your last stitch, just because this is a knit, you're just going to seam off. So knit off and then purl off. And you can see I maybe cut my yarn tail a little bit too close there. Maybe cut 4 times the width of your fabric rather than 3, because that's how much I've got left. You can see this creates a nice seamless join where the purl columns are joined by purl stitches and the knit columns are joined by knit stitches. Now it is a half step off. This is just the nature of Kitchener stitch. It happens when grafting in stockinette too. You just don't notice it because stockinette looks the same upside down and right side up. But that's what that looks like flat. Now for the in the round version. When you're setting up to work Kitchener stitch in the round, you want to make sure that you have the same number of stitches on both needles. Your needle tips are pointing to the right. Your yarn tail is attached to the back needle, and you have a length of yarn that's about 4 times the maximum stretched width of the area to be grafted. Again, plus a couple extra inches if you're only grafting a short area, because you want to make sure you have enough to weave in at the end. The only real difference between grafting in the round and grafting flat is that when you work in the round, you want to eliminate the setup step and the finishing step that you worked for the flat version. This just helps to keep the corners nice and rounded. Otherwise, you can get dog ears, which is when the corners poke up oddly, and we don't want that for this project. So once again, you're going to start with same off, opposite on. You're going to start with your front needle. These are 2 knit stitches here, so we're going to knit off, purl on. Knit off, purl on. Pull that through. And then just mirror it on the back needle once again. Purl off. Knit on. Pull that through. And just carry on. So front needle, these are 2 knit stitches, so knit off, purl on. And then purl off, knit on the back to mirror what you just did on the front needle. So this is a knit purl, so you're going to knit off, knit on, same off, opposite on. And then on the back needle, just mirror it, purl off, purl on. I'll show you at the end here some advanced finishing techniques, some what to do if your tension is too loose, how to help the corners round over if it needs a little extra coaxing for the corners not to stand up too high from the body of your project. So I'll work all the way to the last 2 stitches to show you how we finish this, and then I'll show you those extra finishing techniques. So here I am at the end of the row, or the end of the round. I have 2 knit stitches left on my front needle. So same as before, we're just going to seam off, so knit off. And this would normally be an opposite on, so you're going to purl through that stitch, but because it's the last stitch, you're just going to immediately take it right off the needle. You only want to sew through that stitch once. And then, so that was a knit and a knit, so we're going to purl, knit through that. So just mirror exactly the same thing on the back needle and take both stitches off at once. The reason you do that is because each time you sew through a stitch doing Kitchener stitch grafting, you form one leg of a stitch, right? So eliminating one pass from each stitch on the end just eliminates half a stitch from the corners of your project, and that helps it round in a little bit smoother rather than having a straight edge right at the end of your project there. So here you can see I've left my tension intentionally quite loose. This is far too loose to leave as your finished project. So what you can do is you can go back over to where you started your graft and you can just ease the tension over. So I'm going to take the tip of my tapestry needle here and I'm just going to gently start pulling those loose stitches just to ease the excess slack towards the end of the seam, right? Take your time with this. You know, try and match your tension to the knit stitches. You don't want to pull too tight. You can cause puckering and odd gaps that way. Just take your time. And just continue gradually working that excess slack towards the end of the seam. Still a little too loose there. All right, so you can see where I've pulled the excess slack out. It now looks quite smooth versus where I've left it too loose. You can see there's gaps there that shouldn't be. Where I've adjusted the tension, it rolls smoothly over the top. All right, so here I am all the way at the end of the round. There's all that excess slack, and now you can just pull it through. So once you're at this point, you've got your tension adjusted the way it needs to be. You can see the ribbing is all sitting smoothly together like that. Just take your needle, see where that thread is poking up, just go right on the other side of it with your tapestry needle, poke it straight down to the inside so that you can do your finishing work. So now let's say you don't like how sharply these corners are poking up. You can do a little bit of extra work on the inside when you're weaving in your yarn tails to correct this and make them round down a little bit more smoothly. So the ribbing looks good at this point, but the corners need some adjustment. So what you're going to do is turn it inside out, and you're just going to do some thread sculpting. What you do is you take your yarn tail that's still attached to this corner here, just whip it around the corner, just sew in a small circle around the corner. Doesn't matter which stitches you pick up, just go through, you know, one half of a stitch here, you know, the top of a purl stitch there, just go all the way around, just like that. Make a full circle, like so. And then just pull this tight so it draws those stitches in a little bit more closely. Take your yarn tail and weave it in as you normally would. I'm just gonna weave down this column of knit stitches here. Back up the other way. And then you can see, when you turn it right side out again, you can see that this corner has rounded down much more smoothly than this one, which may be an effect that you want in your finished project. It hasn't disrupted the grafting at all. The ribbing still rolls smoothly over the top. It's just made that corner sit a little bit more smoothly rather than this one, which may be too sharp depending on how you prefer your project to look. And if you want to do one on the other side, just same thing, turn it inside out. Weave in a yarn, you know, leave yourself a yarn tail here so that you can weave it in later. Sew around the corner, pull it tight, and then weave in the ends as normal. All right, that's it. I hope this was helpful. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon.